The mansion stood like a monument to power. 42,000 square feet of stone and glass, perched arrogantly above the city, like a queen disinterested in her subjects. Every inch of it gleamed: marble floors, chandeliers from Prague, oil paintings worth more than most homes. But within its immaculate walls, the air was frigid, not from the temperature, but from something far colder: emptiness. Victoria Blackwell moved like she owned not only the house, but the very air inside it. At 38, she was already a titan of pharmaceuticals, CEO of a global empire, and widow of one of Wall Street's most notorious magnates. She wore grief like a designer coat, tailored, expensive, and completely impervious. Her stilettos clicked sharply as she crossed the hallway, Christian Louboutin, naturally, echoing like gunshots across the sterile silence. In her hand was a leather-bound portfolio of clinical reports. Her son's reports. Oliver. 7 years old, diagnosed with severe autism at 5. 3 specialists, 6 medications, no eye contact, no verbal response, no connection. No hope. And yet, that morning, something was off. She'd been returning from a board call when she heard it, a sound, a voice, faint but unmistakably his. Not a cry, not a groan, a word. Victoria froze in place. Then she heard another sound, a woman's voice, warm, unhurried, speaking French? Her heels struck harder as she marched down the west corridor, past the library, toward the source, and when she turned the corner into the sunroom, she stopped cold. There, sitting cross-legged on the polished floor, was her son. His blonde hair tousled, his back to the window, a brightly illustrated book in his lap, and beside him, Lana, the cleaning woman, dressed in a faded blue apron, her hands lightly brushing the carpet as she spoke in hushed, melodic tones. Victoria's blood turned to ice. "Why are you speaking to my son?" Her voice sliced through the air like broken glass. Lana looked up, calm, unflinching. She rose with slow grace, adjusting the cloths in her apron. There was no fear in her posture, only dignity. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwell. He came over to me. He doesn't come to anyone. He hasn't spoken to anyone in 2 years, and now I find you here filling his head with what exactly?" Lana didn't flinch. Behind her, Oliver kept thumbing through the book, his fingers lingering on pages filled with animals and colorful French labels. "He responded when I spoke. That's all," Lana said carefully. "I didn't mean any harm." "Responded?" Victoria scoffed. "You think a few foreign words are going to unlock a medically confirmed condition? 3 of the best neurologists in the country have diagnosed him. He doesn't learn, he doesn't understand." Lana took a breath. She wasn't here to fight. She had faced worse storms than this woman's cold fury. What burned in her chest wasn't anger, it was recognition. Because she had seen those same hollow eyes before, in children dismissed as hopeless, written off by the very people meant to believe in them. And she had seen what happened when someone, just one person, decided not to give up. Sometimes children just need to be heard in the language that makes sense to them. Victoria let out a bitter laugh, stepping forward until their faces were inches apart. "You, a cleaning lady, are giving me parenting advice about a child you've known for 3 months. "It's not advice," Lana replied gently, crouching beside Oliver again. "It's a possibility." And then it happened. Oliver looked up, directly at Lana. His lips moved, quietly, deliberately. "Merci, madame." Victoria staggered. The room went dead silent, the kind of silence that feels alive, taut, stretched across the air like a string waiting to snap. He He spoke. Victoria's voice broke slightly. He spoke. French? Lana gave a small nod, her eyes glowing with restrained hope. Children like Oliver aren't broken, Mrs. Blackwell. They just speak a different language than we do. Victoria's shifted from Lana to her son, then back. She took the book from Oliver's lap, an old Italian picture dictionary, likely pulled from the forgotten shelf in the East Library. Where did this come from? The library, ma'am. I was reorganizing the books. And you thought it appropriate to use my child as a science project? Her voice climbed, sharp and venomous. This is beyond unprofessional. It's predatory. But Lana's calm did not crack. She merely bowed her head. Of course, I understand. I'll return to the service wing. She turned to leave, but not before catching one final glance from Oliver. This time, he smiled. Just a little. Just enough. And Lana's heart caught fire. Outside, the sun dipped below the trees, casting long golden shadows across the marble floor. But inside that mansion, a fire had been lit, faint, flickering, but real. A boy had spoken, a woman had been heard, and a war of perception had just begun. The next morning, the mansion returned to its usual silence, a kind of museum hush, as though joy had been scrubbed from its marble floors and stored in a vault somewhere far from sight. The staff spoke in whispers, the clocks ticked louder than normal, and Oliver sat at the breakfast table like a ghost in human form. But something was different. Lana could feel it the moment she stepped into the West Wing. There was tension in the air. Victoria had not fired her. Not yet. Instead, she had left a short note on the kitchen counter, written in her usual clipped script. Focus your duties on the lower wing. Avoid contact with Oliver. Do not enter the study or east corridor. No explanation, no confrontation. Just icy control. Lana obeyed, at least outwardly. But deep inside, something had changed. It wasn't just that Oliver had spoken. It wasn't even that he'd made eye contact. It was the way his gaze had lingered, as if he recognized her, not just as a person, but as someone who understood. She had seen that look before, in dusty classrooms across 3 continents, in refugee shelters, in locked wards, in children everyone else had given up on. And now, here in a mansion guarded by money and pride, she'd seen it again, and she wasn't going to let it vanish. As she dusted shelves in the basement that afternoon, she whispered softly while she worked. Bonjour, chien, papillon, hola, amigo, canción, ciao, amore, bambino. Not loudly, just enough for someone walking by to hear. And sometimes, someone did. Oliver had begun to appear, casually, silently, at the doorways. Not close, not too near, but always listening. And each day, he got closer. One afternoon, while Lana was folding linens near the servants' staircase, she felt a presence behind her. She turned. Oliver was there, holding a picture book, one with animal illustrations and labels in Spanish. He didn't speak, but his eyes were glowing with recognition. She knelt to his level. Perro, she said gently, pointing to the dog. Perro, he whispered. Gato, gato. Elefante, elefante. It was like a dam breaking, quietly, steadily, word by word. The silence was losing. She wanted to cry, but she didn't. Not yet. Later that evening, while the house slept under its canopy of wealth and emptiness, Lana sat in the servants' quarters and took out a notebook. She hadn't used it in years, not since her mother fell ill and everything she had built began to unravel. She flipped to the last page. There, in faded ink, were the notes from her last seminar. Selective mutism, neurolinguistic strategies for multilingual children. She turned to a blank page and began to write again. Oliver Blackwell, case study number 44. And so the quiet revolution began. 2 floors above, in the master bedroom, Victoria was drinking Chardonnay and rereading the latest report from Oliver's specialist. Nonverbal autism, no signs of cognitive progress, regression continues. She tossed it aside with a bitter scoff. But something about Lana's words the day before still echoed in her mind. They just need to be heard in the language that makes sense to them. Victoria wasn't sure why it haunted her, maybe because it sounded like hope, and hope had long since become dangerous. The following morning, something happened. It was small, almost unnoticeable. Victoria passed by the playroom and heard a voice, a child's voice, speaking. Italian? Gatto, uccello, cavallo. She opened the door quietly. Oliver was sitting on the rug, by himself, flipping pages of a language book and mouthing the words. No one else was there, no Lana in sight. Victoria stood frozen, then slowly, deliberately, closed the door. She didn't speak of it, not to Dr. Chun, not to the staff, but she saw it. She heard it. And she was afraid, because if Oliver could speak, if he could learn, then maybe, just maybe, everything she believed was a lie. And Victoria Blackwell did not handle lies well. That afternoon, Lana was organizing canned goods in the storage pantry when she heard footsteps approaching. She turned to find Dr. Marcus Chun, the family's private pediatrician, descending the stairs with a furrowed brow. "May I speak with you in private?" he asked, scanning the area. She nodded. He lowered his voice. "Yesterday, I heard something from Oliver. French, clearly spoken. It was you, wasn't it?" Lana hesitated. "He responds to languages, to tone, to rhythm. It's not magic, it's neurology." Dr. Chun's eyes narrowed. "And you know this? How?" "Because I've spent 10 years studying it. I have a PhD in applied linguistics, Columbia University. My focus was multilingualism in neurodivergent children. I've published 17 papers internationally, and I've worked with over 40 cases like Oliver." The silence between them was thick, heavy with implications. Dr. Chun blinked. "You're serious?" "Deadly." "Then why? Why are you working here, as a cleaning lady?" "Because life doesn't care about credentials. My mother got sick, I lost my research grant, I needed money fast, so I cleaned and stayed quiet until your boy looked me in the eye." Dr. Chun sat on a nearby crate, stunned. "What do you think he has?" "Selective mutism, severe auditory sensitivity, and emotional shutdown due to prolonged misdiagnosis." "So, he's not autistic?" "He's on the spectrum," she said carefully, "but not like they think. He doesn't need sedation. He needs stimulation. He needs language." Dr. Chun stood slowly. "Oliver's due for a med adjustment tomorrow. Victoria wants to double his dosage, says he's fantasizing again. Lana's jaw tightened. He's not fantasizing, he's waking up. Dr. Chun reached into his coat and pulled out a card. Call me. Tonight. We'll figure something out. He disappeared up the stairs, and Lana stood alone, holding the card in her trembling hand. For the first time in years, she had an ally. But she didn't know yet. Upstairs in the hallway, someone else had been listening. The housekeeper, Sandra, and the next morning, everything would change. Morning sunlight sliced through the east corridor like a blade, illuminating the intricate patterns of the marble floor and casting long cathedral-like shadows across the Blackwell estate. It looked like a palace. It felt like a fortress. And for Lana Santos, it was fast becoming a battlefield. She woke early, earlier than usual. Her dreams the night before had been filled with children's voices whispering in overlapping tongues, French, Spanish, Arabic, German, Oliver's voice among them echoing with delicate clarity. Gato, merci, mama. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't coincidence. It was the unmistakable sound of awakening. She rose and dressed, not in the dull uniform of a cleaning woman, but in a crisp blouse she'd tucked away in the back of her closet, a remnant of her former life. She tied her curls back neatly and tucked her notebook under her arm. Today she would begin. She just didn't know yet that her secret was already unraveling. Upstairs, in Victoria's office, Sandra stood like a loyal sentry, with venom in her voice and a smirk on her lips. "Ms. Blackwell, I think you need to hear this." Victoria looked up from her spreadsheet, already annoyed. "What is it now, Sandra?" "It's about Lana." Victoria set down her coffee. "What about her?" Sandra's pause was deliberate. "Last night, I overheard her on the phone. She was talking to a man, someone named James. Sounded like a professor or something. She mentioned Columbia, scientific journals, selective mutism protocols. She called herself Dr. Santos." The room shifted. Victoria leaned back slowly in her leather chair, eyes narrowing. A cleaning woman pretending to be a doctor. She said she worked with over 40 children like Oliver, claimed she had credentials. Honestly, it sounded like a scam to get close to your son. Victoria's mind began to spin, faster than she wanted to admit. Was it true? Could it be? "Bring her to me now." 15 minutes later, Lana entered the room, her posture poised, her face unreadable. Victoria stood behind her desk, a laptop open and glowing, something pulled up on the screen. "Sit," Victoria commanded. Lana didn't hesitate. She took the seat with quiet grace, folding her hands. "You lied to me." Victoria flipped the laptop around. Displayed was Dr. Luana Santos, Columbia University, Department of Linguistics. A detailed academic profile, publications, awards, photos from international conferences. "You led me to believe you were just a cleaning lady." Lana's voice was calm but firm. "I never said I wasn't qualified. I simply didn't offer information you never asked for." Victoria slammed her palm on the desk. "Don't play games with me. You misled me all this time. Why?" "Because from the very first day, you made it clear that my role was to clean, not to speak. You saw my skin, my uniform, and you assumed I had nothing of value to offer." That hit hard. Too hard. Victoria looked away. "You should have told me." "So you could fire me sooner?" Lana cut in gently. "So you could say, even with a PhD, she still scrubs my floors?" Victoria felt a heat rising in her chest. Rage, shame, confusion. She couldn't name it. And then, the door burst open. "Lana!" A child's voice. "Oliver." He rushed into the room, hair tousled, face bright, eyes lit from within. Behind him was Dr. Chun, trying to keep pace. "Luana!" Oliver called again in Portuguese. He switched mid-sentence. "J'ai apprécié la chanson." I like the song. Then, without missing a beat, "Puedes enseñarme más palabras?" Can you teach me more words? Victoria staggered back. He's speaking. He's switching languages. 3 in 1 sentence, Dr. Chun said softly, and that's not all. He walked forward and placed a tablet on the desk. These are recordings from the last 2 weeks, supervised by me. The videos began to play. Oliver counting in German, reciting the alphabet in Mandarin, singing a children's song in Arabic, reading animal names in Italian. Victoria stared at the screen frozen. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Lana knelt beside Oliver, her voice gentle. "Because he was never as broken as you were told. He wasn't refusing to speak. He didn't feel safe. He didn't have a language he felt belonged to him. When he heard one, he followed the sound." Dr. Chun stepped forward. "This child is extraordinary. I've been a pediatrician for 20 years. I've never seen this kind of transformation, not this fast. His cognitive scores are soaring. His eyes are alive." Victoria dropped to her knees, her vision blurred. He called me Mama yesterday, for the first time in 2 years. Oliver turned to her, his voice shy but clear. "Mama, Lana says I'm smart." He hesitated, then added in Italian, "Lei mi ha insegnato a parlare, perché mi ascolta." She taught me to speak because she listens. Victoria's heart shattered and reassembled in the same instant. She looked at Lana, no longer with contempt, but with reverence. I need to apologize, and I need to ask you, not as an employee, but as the woman who gave me back my son." She swallowed. "Would you stay? As his teacher?" Lana placed a hand on Oliver. "I'll stay, but only under one condition." Victoria nodded quickly. "Anything. That you don't see him as a miracle or a success story. He's not your trophy. He's a child, a brilliant, beautiful, complex child who deserves to be seen, not used." Victoria's breath hitched. She nodded. "You have my word." And in that moment, something undeniable happened. A boy, a mother, a woman once ignored, a family forged not by blood, but by truth. The transformation began not with trumpets or applause, but with laughter. Small, bright, impossible to ignore laughter echoing through the mansion's once sterile hallways. Within days of the confrontation in Victoria's office, the air in the Blackwell estate changed, literally and emotionally. The shades were lifted, the windows opened, the suffocating quiet gave way to the soft chaos of childhood. And at the center of it all, Oliver. He no longer shuffled from room to room like a ghost. Now he danced, spinning through the corridors with a book in one hand and a tune on his lips. He spoke in Italian at breakfast, Arabic at lunch, and whispered Mandarin to the family dog as if it, too, needed to learn. The house staff watched in awe. Lana's presence, once invisible, now commanded admiration, not because she demanded it, but because she had become undeniable. Even Victoria's friends, the kind with plastic skin and icy smiles, began to take notice. "Your boy is talking?" "Not just talking," Victoria replied one afternoon. "He's thriving." And yet, not everyone welcomed the change. Sandra, former queen of the service staff, had been reassigned to a remote guest house pending dismissal. Her whispers of fraud and dangerous ideas had fallen flat after Dr. Chun publicly endorsed Lana's work. But Sandra wasn't done. She had her own plan. She called in a favor with an old family friend, a pediatric neurologist, one of the very doctors who had initially diagnosed Oliver. She arranged a private visit unannounced, scheduled for the following week, a final strike. Meanwhile, in the East Study, now converted into Oliver's learning studio, Lana sat across from the boy, holding a deck of flashcards. "Ready, maestro?" she asked playfully. Oliver beamed. "Sí, professoressa." He picked up a card. "Butterfly." "Say it in French." "Papillon." "In Spanish?" "Mariposa." "In Arabic?" He hesitated, thinking, then smiled. "Farasha." "And in Japanese?" "Cho." Lana clapped. "Perfect." Oliver giggled, then glanced at the camera in the corner. It was recording. The channel, Learning with Oliver, had just gone live the week before, under Victoria's guidance. At first, it was just for fun, but within 72 hours, the channel had racked up 30,000 views. A boy once labeled nonverbal, now teaching languages. And people were listening. That evening, as Victoria reviewed the latest footage in her home office, Dr. Chun arrived carrying a brown envelope. "Preliminary assessments," he said, setting it down. "IQ tests, cognitive mapping, linguistic aptitude." Victoria opened the envelope. Her jaw dropped. "This is genius level. Not rare, but rarely recognized." He paused. "You need to know something, though. One of your old specialists is coming next week. Sandra arranged it, likely trying to discredit everything that's happening here." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Not in my house," she muttered. "Let them come," Lana's voice rang from the doorway. She entered, calm as ever. "Let them witness what they missed." Victoria stared at her. Once, she had dismissed this woman as a servant. Now she looked at her as something else, something powerful. "Are you not afraid?" she asked. "Only of wasted potential," Lana replied. The following week, Dr. Robert Hastings arrived. A man with perfect white teeth, horn-rimmed glasses, and a tone that could sterilize a room. He entered the East Study like a king inspecting a colony. Oliver was playing with flashcards. Lana sat beside him, calm. "So this is the prodigy," Hastings murmured, flipping open his tablet. "Let's begin." For 30 minutes, he asked questions, tested comprehension, assessed syntax. And Oliver delivered. "He's memorized these," Hastings accused. "He's parroting sounds." "Would you like to hear him translate poetry?" Lana asked sweetly. Hastings blinked. "Excuse me?" "In Arabic, then Mandarin, then German." Oliver began to recite. By the end of the demonstration, Hastings looked shaken. "His tests, his results, I don't understand." Lana leaned forward. "That's the point, Doctor. You didn't try to understand. You labeled him and moved on. But he's not a case file, he's a child, one who needed someone to meet him where he was." Hastings stood, visibly rattled. He left without another word. That night, Victoria stood on the balcony with a glass of wine and watched Oliver case fireflies with Lana in the garden. He was laughing. Laughing! It had been so long since she'd heard that sound, she forgot it existed. She turned to Dr. Chun beside her. "He's not just getting better, he's alive." Dr. Chun nodded. "And it's all because someone saw him before she saw his diagnosis." Victoria wiped away a tear. "I thought I had to protect him from the world, but what I really did was bury him inside it." She looked at Lana. She brought him back. And so the breakthrough was complete. Not just Oliver's, Victoria's. The house that once silenced everything it touched was now filled with music, books, and conversation in 9 different languages. But more than that, it was filled with hope. And that was just the beginning. The Blackwell estate, once a temple of silence and polished marble, was now alive. Gone were the hushed voices and sterile corridors. Gone were the therapy schedules, the sedatives, the impersonal charts that measured Oliver's deficiency. In their place, colored flashcards pinned to walls, laughter echoing up staircases, sticky notes in 5 languages dotting the windows and banisters. Transformation had begun. But it wasn't just Oliver who was changing. It was everyone.